City deserve to win, but deserving to win and winning are two different things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, Nottingham Forest comes to mind there. I feel like he was mouthing to the crowd, I love it there. And you can just tell him, I love it. He loves scoring goals, he loves winning games. He's the last one on the pitch there. He's the last one celebrating to the fans. He's so up for it. And obviously, his penalty was the winner today. I was horrendously nervous, as I always am when we take penalties. And I really need to relax now because Erling Haaland is a phenomenal penalty taker, Nedum.
Yeah, he is. You know, he scored all the ones he's had for City. Not all of them have looked as good as, say, that one did today. But I get the nervousness around, penalties because you can't help but sort of be attached to worst-case scenario. It would be nice if everyone knew someone stepping up was definitely going to score. But we've seen across the years, apart from, say, when Yaya was here, and think Ivan Toney to a certain extent, you've seen people miss, and you only need to see it once to know the pain that causes you at some point. So if at 0-0, you're more concerned. If it was 1-0 to City or 2-0 to City, the anxiety goes away. But you just, you're taking all the factors. But again, this was a very good penalty. He's very keen to score and take those. And considering he'd missed 1 or 2 chances before that, didn't faze him, stepped up, does the job. What a feeling.
In terms of that penalty being awarded, it was a corner for City. Lovely play, I thought, from Gundogan, noticing the space and getting into it, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, sorry, I was gonna lead in this because I was talking about this as it was happening. And sorry to jump in, Steve, but it was just a corner. Everything's set. The cameras are all reset, and everyone thinks it's going to take this amount of time to get the ball into play. But this is one of the things about City and some of the best teams. They're very, very clued in to sense when there's a gap and an opportunity for them to go and play. So Jack's over the ball, I think, and Gundogan is unmarked. And he's seen Elise's gone just a bit higher, and now there's a big space, and that space would have disappeared if Grealish would have decided we're going to go traditional and get it into the box. But instead, Gundogan says, no, here's the space, and he ran. And key things were, firstly, the fact that Jack played it, play what you see, and Gundogan received the ball in the penalty box, because then that adds that element of danger and jeopardy for the opposition. So he got it, he took his touch. It wasn't the best of first touches, but then Elise has now had to react because he thought he had everything under control. So all of a sudden there's somebody behind him that's free in his box, and he makes a mistake, he dives in, and that's the sort of sloppiness that unfortunately separates teams down the bottom compared to the ones near the top, because you need to be set. It's a set piece. You've got a chance to organise. So to be able to get caught out, that's a big flaw. Vieira will be very, very unhappy with that. In fact, I call him Vieira. I'm going to call him Patrick because I played with him. Patrick will be very unhappy with that. And, unfortunately, that's the nature of their season. Little mistakes can have big consequences, and that was the case today.
Look at him just dropping the mic there, just reminding us quickly.
Yeah, Patrick, I'll text him and say sorry about that.
I can't see it. I'm 2 for 2, but he can give a Patrick one.
Love that analysis, though. Thank you. Although it was worth saying there's only one of you on that sofa that said that City weren't going to concede today, but we'll come to that. We'll get to that. On Erling Haaland, so he scores the penalty, the winning penalty. It feels like, Steve, those are almost the moments that are written for Erling Haaland, the moments where City need to win, and you've brought in the world-class striker who takes the pressure, who scores the goal. It's like it was made for him.
Yeah, I mean, this is why he's a world-class striker, because strikers will miss chances. That's a guarantee. But a world-class striker will miss a chance. Doesn't bother him. What's the next chance? If he misses that, fair enough. What's the next chance? If he misses that, fair enough. What's the next? And there was 2 or 3 in that game. But there's a penalty? Yes, I'm taking it. I'm the striker. I know what I'm doing. Puts it down, puts it away. That's the sign of top strikers. A lot of people, when they miss a chance, it can get to them. They might be snatching at the next one, and then a penalty might come along, and you maybe not fancying them, confident-wise, to score. You fancy him. You fancy him all the time. He puts the ball down. I could see he's kind of looking. If I'm Haaland, he's looking to the goalkeeper's left, and he just opens up his body and sticks it to the right. But top striker. But again, just watching him afterwards, it meant so much to them. But all the players, because that's a difficult place to go to, which we all said before the game it was going to be.
Is that John Stones kissing his head?
Possibly.
Snuggling.
Possibly, yeah. I'm trying to see if there's a gap there, but that's real love.
Fair play, John. Yeah. Thanks for that and a little kiss.
Shout credit as well to Alvarez when he came on. I thought he did really, really well. Almost had a chance to score an incredible goal with the little turn that he had. And I think his sort of dynamism going forward, that sort of selfless running, And just his eye for goal as well caused Palace some significant problems at the point where, like, I think it happened in the 57th minute. So for City, going for it that early away from home, you know, that's a big statement in itself, and thankfully they were rewarded for it today.
What do you think the tactical thinking was there in terms of taking Foden off and putting Alvarez on?
I think that just at times, like, they were controlling the midfield, but Palace essentially, this is just my perspective, and I could be completely wrong here. For the vast majority of that first, like, 60 minutes, they were very much on the back foot, and City didn't need an extra sort of body in midfield as such to control the game. So to try and put two players up there now, but then to still have a bit of width within it, I think it just meant that defensively, Palace was sort of more reluctant to sort of make that step forward. In fairness to them, I think probably after they conceded, they were more in the ascendancy because there was more space. And Vieira countered that move by trying to gain some level of control there, and they were fine. But again, they've scored 21 goals this season in the Premier League. So even though they can create an overload, they don't really know how to sort of maximise that potential. But I think for Pep, it's a very clear statement. We're bringing on two forwards. We've got two forwards out there now. For as much as we can move the ball side to side, here are the players who are going to be more incisive. Here's a guy who's going to be stretching the game in behind. But best of all, like, with the chance that, well, we call it a chance because this is the anxiety we have. When that ball got cut across and no Palace player touched it, firstly, like, you could say, if you was out City perspective, say it's bad. But the player that was back there sort of defending that was Alvarez. So he's somebody who does it both ways. And I think when you have players like that within the team, it's exactly what you need when a game is stretched and you need to get something from it.
And you just described him as a box-to-box attacker.
No, just a really good footballer. I think I'll just simplify it like that, yeah.
So we celebrated here in the studio. And over in LA, Sean Wright-Phillips is on the Premier League Trophy Tour. They celebrated out there as well. Let's take a little look. That is the screening in LA. Short and sweet, that, but yes, they were celebrating. They were celebrating. Couldn't see Sean there. Maybe he was at the front.
Well, nothing more needs to be said, does it, Steve?
So, in terms of the defence, we're going to go back to it now. Only one of you said that City were going to keep a clean sheet tonight. Only one of you really represented the Defenders Union. Well done, Steve. Well done. You're happy with your prediction?
Well, he was wrong. He said 2-0, but sure. Whatever you say.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought... I agreed, though, with what Nedum was saying. It is a case of it's the Premier League and it only takes a split second and it's a goal. So you make a prediction of 0 and then it's wiped out. But they were always going to pose a threat. And I always knew they were going to have their bit of time. So, listen, they defended very, very well. When you look at it, though, has Edison actually had a save to make? I'm not too sure if he actually has.
They didn't have a shot on target.
Yeah, so...
Blocks, though.
So there you go, but good defending. And even on the last one as well, when Saha is the one that cuts it across, and you were seeing Alvarez was coming back, it's Jack Grealish who picks up the loose ball.
Yep.
So it just goes to show everybody's making sure, everybody's working ever so hard. It is a team game for Man City.
Yeah.
So we sent RLs to Crystal Palace today, and she's found Michael Brown to find out what he thought of today's game.
So the full-time whistle has gone here at a very rainy Selhurst Park. Michael, sum it up for us, please.
Well, it was a difficult game, as expected. Crystal Palace blocked that midfield, made it really tough for City to break through. And I wasn't sure it was going to happen. Pep Guardiola was just about to make that change with Kevin De Bruyne. And it was, again, the experience of Ilkay Gundogan getting to good positions. Palace switched off for 1 second. He drew the foul, and it was all about Haaland, wasn't it? Very composed, a great penalty, celebrating off to the right-hand side over there, and it turned out a wonderful away performance for City.
Definitely, and you mentioned Haaland there and Gundogan. Any key players for you other than that?
Well, that's what I was asked in commentary, actually, who was man of the match, and I thought, well, it was so difficult. It was one of those games where City didn't really, create loads on an outstanding player. It was about the team performance. So Rodri in the middle of the pitch, I thought Akanji started really well. Good to see John Stones back. So I mentioned so many, but listen, it was a wonderful performance. I think the pressure was on slightly coming here, and you'd certainly have took that at the start of the game.
Definitely. Well, thank you very much, Michael. It's a solid 3 points here at Selhurst Park. Back to you guys at the studio.
Thanks, Els. Thank you, Michael. So we mentioned that Arsenal are playing tomorrow. They've got Fulham. So we've closed the gap to 2 points. That momentum, that keeping the pressure on them, that's so important, Steve.
It is. I mean, they'll be looking at that. They'll know that it was a difficult game. As I said, that's why we're saying all the City players, because they knew it was going to be a difficult game. Yeah, It's a game they've won reasonably comfortably, if you know what I mean, but it was still a very difficult game. They deserved to win the game, but as I sort of said, it's one thing deserving it, one thing winning it. But the strange thing about this is because Arsenal's still in Europe, they're always going to be lucky. And if City can constantly win and win and win, it puts the pressure back on them. They know they can't afford to make mistakes. I mean, obviously they got that result last week against who was it? Bournemouth. Yeah, the 3-2, which was a ridiculous result for them. They'll feel as though it's the kind of the luck, if you want, is going for them. But they've got a tough game against Fulham. They've looked at this result. City have won. They know they have to keep on winning. The pressure's going to be on them, and it does get to you, believe me.
So City's next game is, of course, in the Champions League, Tuesday night at home at the Etihad Stadium in our second leg against RB Leipzig. Score is currently 1-1. So huge game on Tuesday night, Nedum. How are you feeling ahead of it?
It's the same as it was before this game. Like, you know, there's a reason why City are favourites for most games that they play in. It's because they have the quality and they have the experience. But then it's like we mentioned before about how this is the Premier League. Well, this is the Champions League. This is a knockout stage of that. And it's not to say that anything goes, but if you are to get through, you really have to be exceptionally clinical. You can't afford to have a bad day, especially in a second leg like this. But it's Man City at home, and they tend to do pretty well at home. They've got a really good history in the Champions League at home as well. So I'm not like excited by the thought of watching it, but I have a very strong belief that they'll find a way to get through it, and that's ultimately the key. I think the Leipzig team will sort of surprise a few people in terms of how direct they can be, as was the case, I think, the start of last season when they played in the group stages at home. Was it like 3-2, 4-3, something like that? It was a high score.
6-3.
Yeah, there were a lot of goals in that game. So they are a very, very strong attacking threat, and that sort of like RB model isn't conducive to like calm games. So expect a wild one at high tempo, but you know the boys are going to be very, very focused, and I'm sure they can find a way through it.
So they've played Borussia Mönchengladbach today. They've won 3-0, Steve. I was just checking that before. Sort of interesting from that, Timo Werner scored, but also Christian Nkunku is injured again. He didn't play. He wasn't in their starting 11 today, and he wasn't on the bench. So if he's not fit for Tuesday, that's a huge loss for them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's one of their star players. But ultimately, Pep and the players, they've got to look at it as though, yes, we understand their players, we get that, we know that they're a threat, but they have to... A team in these competitions and in the Premier League, you've got to concentrate on yourself. What are we good at? What are we strong at? Yes, we know that they're good at this and they're good at that, but what's their weaknesses? How can we impose ourselves on them? And obviously, you have to realise, as Nedum had sort of said as well, it's at the Etihad. You know, it's us that need to be pressing them and shutting them down. Of course, he's an important player for Leipzig, but ultimately, you know, if you want to get through the next round, even if they had the fullest of full teams, they have to beat them to get through the next round.
In terms of our team, are you expecting Riyad Mahrez to come back into the starting?
You call him Champions League.
Mr. Champions League,
yeah,
Mr. Champions League, yep.
Possibly, but then like Phil's doing great, Jack's doing great, you know. So whatever he goes with, I'm ultimately very, very comfortable. You know, I love the teams that he puts out because you can sort of predict how they're going to play, how it's going to look, and everyone's got such strong attributes that you know they can match, that can step up in the big moments. So I'd probably expect to see him, probably expect to see Kevin De Bruyne as well, but then again, it's at what expense? Because I think overall Gundogan played well today, Bernardo Silva played well today, Rodri played well today. So I think it's at times like, it's almost like an embarrassment of riches, but I'm more than happy to have that as opposed to be down to the bare bones and be trying to figure out who you can pick because there's nobody, you know, nobody left.
Are you expecting any changes from today's team for Tuesday, Steve?
Again, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because, you know, it'll be harsh on the lads that actually started the game because they didn't do anything wrong. But then you think, well, looking into it, is that why he's rested, possibly Kevin De Bruyne? Why he hasn't put on at all somebody like Mahrez? I've said all along, and it is the case for me, I just don't know what Pep will do. But ultimately, when you look at the quality of players that he's got, you've got to be happy with the team that he picks because it's a superb team with very, very good individuals.
Thank you. Very much looking forward to it. Although I have to admit, I think my nerves after today's game, my nerves are not going to settle. My nerves.
Told you, this is it.
continue.
Between now and the end of the season, this is it. Every single day could finish with huge success, could finish with nothing, but this is the feeling going forward. Get used to it.
Oh, but if we win on Tuesday, then can I at least have Wednesday and Thursday off before I start thinking about the FA Cup?
Nah, because you'll be thinking about the draw and stuff.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean? You can never escape it.
You're right. It is that end of the season now. But do you know what? I'd rather have this feeling than not
This is
have
true.
it.
It's always nice to be playing for something. Let's just say that.
Always. Nedum Onuoha, thank you so much. Steve Howey, thank you so much for joining
Pleasure.
me. And thank you for joining us for another Match Day Live as City beat Crystal Palace 1-0. Erling Haaland with his 28th Premier League goal of the season. City back to within 2 points to leaders Arsenal. We'll be back with you on Tuesday night as City go in the second leg of the knockout of last of 16 of the Champions League. Maybe try and see if you can settle your nerves between now and then. I'm going to maybe just try and do some meditating or something. Matchday Live will be back then. We'll see you on Tuesday.